Humanity had always felt safe in the vastness of space. For over a century, humans explored distant moons, built thriving colonies, and traded with alien species. The universe was full of wonder, opportunities, and peace. Or so they believed. It all changed one morning in Geneva, where Director Sarah Chen was sipping her coffee. Suddenly, every screen in the United Earth Command building blared an alarm, and the building shook with urgency. Officers ran through the hallways, shouting orders, but the chaos made it impossible to hear anything clearly. Sarah grabbed the lieutenant by the arm. "What is happening?" she demanded. "Ships, ma'am. Thousands of them. They just appeared near Jupiter," the young officer said, his face pale. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Humans had met other species before. The Morvani had been traitors who betrayed their own kind, the CRE species were distant, and the Velari Dominion, humans had heard whispers about them, stories filled with fear. But never had they imagined this. The ships were enormous. Each one, massive and adorned with glowing purple symbols, moved like a dark wave across the solar system, obscuring the distant stars. By the time Sarah had time to process, the fleet had grown from thousands to millions. These weren't just invaders, they were an extermination fleet. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Resilience, a massive human carrier, eyes wide with horror as the numbers climbed. "This is not an invasion force," she murmured. "This is the end of us." The message came 3 hours later. On every radio, television, and computer screen across Earth, an image appeared, a tall, gray-skinned creature with 4 eyes and draped in purple robes, speaking with cold detachment. "Primitive species of the third planet," the creature said, its voice devoid of emotion. "I am High Speaker Vorith of the Velari Dominion. For 12,000 years, we have ruled this galaxy. You either bow before us, or you perish." A shudder ran through humanity. The Velari had seen their kind as nothing more than insects, their civilizations laughably small in comparison to the Dominion's might. The ultimatum was clear: surrender or die. The leaders of Earth gathered in the council chamber, arguing about what to do. Some urged immediate surrender. What could humanity do against 9 million ships? Others, like General Marcus Cole, feared what surrender meant: slavery, worse than death. "We cannot let them enslave us," he said with a fierce look. "We fight, or we lose our soul." Admiral Tanaka stood alone, gazing at the sky. Somewhere out there, the Velari fleet waited. What future awaited her children, her grandchildren, under the rule of such merciless beings? And then, a small, weary figure entered the room. Dr. Elena Vasquez, an old scientist with gray hair, had spent years studying artifacts found deep in the Martian caves. "I have something to show you," she said, setting a data pad on the table. "Something that will change everything. What Dr. Vasquez reveals will shake humanity to its core. Is there a hidden weapon inside Earth's population that could change the tide of this invasion?" The council room went quiet as Dr. Elena Vasquez activated the data pad, and a hologram appeared in front of everyone. The room was filled with images of ancient Martian artifacts, symbols, carvings, and objects that had puzzled scientists for decades. She looked around at the gathered leaders. "For 30 years, I thought these were the remnants of an alien civilization. But I was wrong. What if these are messages meant for us?" The room fell into stunned silence. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, President Morrison of the North American Union, who had been the most vocal in urging for surrender, broke the silence. "What does this have to do with the Velari fleet? We don't have time for riddles." Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly, pressing a button on the pad. The hologram shifted, and a glowing strand of DNA appeared in the air. It pulsed with an eerie blue light. "This," she said softly, "is human DNA. I discovered it in the Martian ruins, an identical match to every human on Earth. The so-called junk DNA we have ignored for centuries, it's not junk at all. It's a message. An ancient message that has been locked inside our genes for millennia. Her words sent a ripple through the room. General Cole leaned forward, eyes narrowing. A message? From who? What does this have to do with the Velari? Dr. Vasquez hesitated for a moment, then continued, her voice dropping to a whisper. Long before the Velari Dominion ever rose, there were other beings known as the Architects. They were the ones who created the galaxy's most advanced technologies, including the ones the Velari now use. But the Architects didn't die. They transformed. She pressed another button, and the hologram shifted again, showing ancient carvings that were once unreadable. The Architects fought a war among themselves, a war unlike any the galaxy had seen. They called it the Black Rising. It was a power so dangerous that it could turn even the greatest of warriors into monsters. To protect the galaxy from their own creations, the Architects sealed this power away within themselves. Everyone in the room watched as Dr. Vasquez continued. The Architects, before they became something terrible, scattered themselves across the galaxy. They erased their memories, lived as primitive species, and hoped one day they could evolve into something better. And now, humanity, we are the children of the Architects. We carry their genes. We carry their power. The room erupted into chaos. Are you saying we have a weapon inside us? President Morrison demanded. Dr. Vasquez's eyes shone with a strange mix of fear and excitement. Not just a weapon. A power, one the Velari have been afraid of for 12,000 years. Admiral Tanaka stood by the window, her mind racing. Could it be true? Were humans really the heirs of such an ancient, terrifying race? Was this power the key to defeating the Velari? Or would it destroy them all? General Cole looked around the room. So we have a choice, surrender to the Velari and be enslaved, or fight back with this power we barely understand. But can we control it? We don't have a choice, Dr. Vasquez replied. The Velari will destroy us either way. But this power is the one thing they fear. We may be the only species in the galaxy with the strength to stop them. Humanity has discovered an ancient power hidden in their DNA, but can they control it? And what happens when they awaken the Black Rising within? The decision weighed heavily on everyone in the room. No one spoke, but the tension was palpable. General Marcus Cole stood up, pacing slowly. We don't even understand what this power is, he said, his voice low. How can we control something that could destroy us just as easily as it could save us? Dr. Elena Vasquez met his gaze, her eyes steady and filled with a quiet urgency. We don't have the luxury of understanding everything. We have to act, and we have to act now. The Velari are on their way, and they won't wait for us to find answers. Admiral Yuki Tanaka, who had been silent, turned toward Dr. Vasquez. You're saying we should awaken something we know nothing about? Something that could turn us into monsters? Her voice was calm, but there was a hint of fear beneath the surface. We don't have a choice, Admiral, Dr. Vasquez replied. The Black Rising is already inside of us, just waiting to be unlocked. The Velari are afraid of it. They've spent 12,000 years trying to erase any trace of the Architects. But they couldn't. And now, we have to decide if we will use this power or die without ever knowing what we could have become. The room fell silent again, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Finally, Admiral Tanaka spoke, her voice firm. We fight. We awaken this power. But we do it on our terms, not on theirs. President Morrison, who had been hesitant up until this point, nodded reluctantly. If we're going to do this, we need to prepare. We need to get every ship ready. We have less than a week before the Velari reach Earth. The Council agreed to move forward. They would wake the ancient power inside them, but they would do it carefully. They would not allow themselves to be consumed by the Black Rising. Not yet, at least. 3 days later, Dr. Vasquez stood in her laboratory, watching as the first signs of the awakening began. She had never imagined how it would feel, how it would feel to tap into such an ancient, powerful force. At first, it was subtle. A flash of insight, a deep understanding of technologies long lost. Then it became more intense. People were experiencing it all over Earth. Workers who had never studied engineering suddenly knew how to repair broken machines. Soldiers felt their reflexes quicken, their senses sharpen. But not all of them could control it. In Shanghai, a factory worker named Li Wei had been in the middle of his shift when he suddenly felt an overwhelming surge of power. It was like a switch had flipped in his mind. He understood the machines around him, not just how they worked, but how to make them better. His hands moved of their own accord, fixing things with an ease he had never known before. And yet, as the power grew stronger, something darker began to stir inside him. A cold, driving force that made him feel unstoppable. He wasn't the only one. Reports flooded in from around the world, soldiers, scientists, even children, all experiencing changes. Some embraced it. Others feared it. At the United Earth Command, General Cole watched these developments with a growing sense of unease. He was training his forces, preparing them for the battle to come, but he couldn't shake the feeling that the Black Rising wasn't something they could simply control. He could feel the change in himself too. The edge of it, the sharpness that made everything else seem dull in comparison. It was like being pulled into something, a current that wanted to carry him away. Dr. Vasquez's warnings echoed in his mind. The Black Rising was a power that could destroy them just as easily as it could save them. Humanity had to remain vigilant, even as they embraced this new strength. And yet, deep down, General Cole knew that they had no choice but to push forward. The Velari would be on Earth soon. If they didn't awaken this power fully, humanity would be nothing more than an insect crushed under the heel of an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. As humanity begins to awaken the Black Rising within, they face new challenges, not just from the Velari, but from the very power they have chosen to unleash. Can they stay true to themselves, or will they lose their humanity in the process? The day arrived faster than anyone expected. The Velari fleet was almost within firing range of Earth. The sky above was filled with thousands of human ships, all of them altered, upgraded with the ancient technologies the Black Rising had unlocked. The massive fleet, now stronger and faster than anything humanity had ever built, was ready to meet the invaders head-on. On the bridge of the Resilience, Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood at the front, looking out into the vast void of space. The enemy fleet loomed large on her tactical display, 9 million ships, each one a symbol of the Velari Dominion's power. But there was something different now. Something inside her and her crew had changed. "Admiral, all systems are green," Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the console. Tanaka nodded but didn't speak. She could feel it, the Black Rising, pulsing through her and through her crew. The feeling was overwhelming, like a force of nature that could not be controlled. Her mind was sharp, her body stronger, her reflexes faster. But as she looked at her crew, she saw it in their eyes too. Something was changing in them. Some were embracing it fully, while others fought to keep their humanity intact. "All ships, prepare for engagement," Tanaka said, her voice cold and commanding. She didn't like it, how distant she felt, how emotionless her words sounded, but she pushed it aside. There was no time for doubt. Far below, Earth was holding its breath. The enemy fleet was coming, but so was humanity's last hope. The first exchange of fire came with a deafening silence. The Velari opened fire with everything they had, millions of weapons streaking through space at unimaginable speeds. The human fleet returned fire, their newly upgraded weapons cutting through Velari shields like they were made of paper. "Incoming fire!" Park shouted, her eyes wide with disbelief. The Resilience shook as a beam from a Velari ship struck the hull. But the shields held. For now, they were stronger than ever. On the ground, General Marcus Cole was coordinating the planetary defense from his command center. He could hear the reports coming in, each one a little more optimistic than the last. "We're not losing yet," he muttered under his breath, though his gut told him otherwise. The Velari fleet was too vast, their firepower too overwhelming. Yet something was happening that he didn't expect. Human soldiers were fighting with a precision and strength that was almost otherworldly. They were moving as one, as if every soldier knew exactly what the others would do before they did it. Their senses were heightened, their coordination flawless. They had become something more than human. In space, the battle raged on. Ships exploded by the hundreds, Velari vessels crumbling under the weight of humanity's new power. The Black Rising was giving them strength, but it was also changing them. The more they fought, the more they felt it, this cold, relentless hunger to conquer. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr., now commanding the Swift, a destroyer on the front lines, could feel the darkness creeping into her thoughts. She was faster, sharper, more deadly than ever before. But as she locked onto another Velari ship, the same question kept echoing in her mind: what would this power do to me? Her weapons officer called out, "All systems ready, Lieutenant. Target locked." "Fire," Yuki ordered, her voice steady, but the darkness inside her stirred, whispering to her. The Black Rising was calling her. She was becoming a perfect warrior, but at what cost? Her destroyer opened fire, sending a massive beam of energy toward the Velari ship. The ship didn't even explode, it simply ceased to exist. A blinding flash of light, and then it was gone. But as the Velari fleet began to suffer heavy losses, High Speaker Vorith on his flagship, the Divine Judgment, was filled with a growing sense of unease. The humans had not only survived their initial onslaught, they were fighting back. No species had ever withstood the Velari before, let alone won a battle. "They've awakened something," Vorith muttered, his 4 eyes narrowing. "This is no longer a battle, it's a war we never planned for. The battle for Earth is far from over, and as humanity's power grows, so does the darkness within them. The Velari are starting to realize that they are not facing an ordinary enemy anymore, but will humanity be able to control the Black Rising, or will they be consumed by it?" The war had only just begun, but humanity was already facing the harsh truth about the power they had unlocked. The Black Rising, the force that flowed through their veins, was pushing them to the limit. As the human fleet cut through the Velari forces, the speed and efficiency of their attacks were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Yet, with every victory, the power inside them grew stronger, and more dangerous. On the Resilience, Admiral Tanaka stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the chaos unfolding before her. The battlefield was a frenzy of flashing lights and explosions as human ships clashed with the Velari. The enemy's once impenetrable shields were now falling apart under the onslaught of humanity's new weapons. "Admiral, we've destroyed over 200 ships in the past hour," Lieutenant Park reported, her voice filled with a mix of awe and concern. "The Velari are retreating, our tactics are working." Tanaka didn't respond right away. She was distracted, her mind clouded by the weight of her own transformation. She could feel the Black Rising within her, urging her on, pushing her to fight harder, to destroy everything in her path. It wasn't just her. She could see it in her crew, too. The same hunger, the same cold efficiency in their eyes. "They're retreating, yes," Tanaka said finally, her voice distant. "But there's more to this than just winning. We need to keep control of ourselves. We can't let this power consume us." As she spoke, she felt it again, a surge of power, a voice inside her urging her to finish the job, to wipe the Velari from existence. It was so strong, so tempting. She had never felt such focus, such clarity of purpose. And yet, something deep inside her resisted. Was she still herself? Or was she becoming something else, something darker? In the battle, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. felt the same pull. She had always been a competent officer, sharp and capable, but now she was something more. As she commanded the Swift, every movement, every decision felt preordained. It was as though the ship, the crew, and she were all one, an extension of something far greater. She watched her weapons officer, a man named Tomas, as he rapidly relayed orders. We're taking fire from the left flank, Lieutenant. Shields are holding, but we're losing power to the rear. Yuki barely acknowledged the report. She was already seeing the solution, the counterattack unfolding in her mind before Tomas had even spoken. Redirect power to rear shields. Fire on the Velari ships in the rear formation. We'll make them regret ever coming here. Her orders were clear, but inside, Yuki felt the conflict. The Black Rising was growing stronger in her, urging her to be merciless, to never show weakness. She could feel herself becoming a weapon, more like the cold, calculating force inside her mother, Admiral Tanaka. The line between warrior and monster was blurring. On Earth, General Cole was dealing with his own internal battle. He stood on a balcony overlooking the destruction, the planet burning in the distance from the ongoing bombardments. The Velari were relentless, but humanity's transformation was undeniable. He felt the power within himself, the changes in his body, the sharpness of his mind. He could see his soldiers, no, his warriors, fighting as if they were extensions of himself. Every strategy, every decision, was being executed with brutal precision. They were unstoppable. And yet, even as they fought, a gnawing feeling crept into his chest. Would this power consume them? Would they become the very thing they had feared in the Velari? "We can't lose ourselves, Elena," he said to Dr. Vasquez, who had been monitoring the progress of the awakening. "Not like the architects did. Not like the Velari expect us to." Dr. Vasquez looked at him, her face weary but determined. "The Black Rising is a double-edged sword, General. We're becoming stronger, yes, but we're also becoming something else. Something harder. If we let it control us, we might win the war, but we'll lose everything else that makes us human." The tension in the air was thick. On one hand, humanity had gained a power that could defeat the Velari, but on the other, they risked losing their humanity in the process. It was a gamble they had no choice but to take. As the war rages on, humanity's grip on their newfound power begins to slip. Can they retain their humanity and win the war, or will they become the very monsters they are fighting against? The war had become a blur of battles, victories, and losses. Humanity's fleet was unstoppable, their ships tearing through the Velari forces with ease. Yet, the cost of their newfound strength was becoming evident. The Black Rising was spreading, its influence growing stronger with each passing day, and with it, the cost of their humanity. On the Resilience, Admiral Tanaka stood at the command center, staring at the tactical display in front of her. The Velari fleet was in disarray, their ships scattered, retreating in fear. Yet, Tanaka felt a strange emptiness inside. The power within her was undeniable, sharpening her mind, enhancing her abilities, but it was also numbing her emotions. The woman who once cared about her family, her planet, her crew, was beginning to fade away. "Admiral, we've wiped out most of the Velari ships," Lieutenant Park reported, her voice full of awe and anxiety. "Only a few hundred remain. The war is almost over." Tanaka didn't respond at first. Instead, she looked out into the dark expanse of space, where the remnants of the Velari fleet fled like broken shadows. She could feel it, the Black Rising urging her forward, pushing her to destroy them all. It was tempting. So tempting. "Admiral." Park's voice broke her out of her trance. "What should we do now? Do we pursue them? Finish this?" Tanaka's eyes flickered with a cold resolve. "Yes. We end this. Once and for all." But even as she said the words, she felt a nagging doubt creep into her mind. "Is this who I am?" she wondered. The woman who had once fought for peace, for her family, for her people, had she become something else entirely? On Earth, the situation was equally dire. General Cole had just received the latest report from the ground forces. The Velari had begun their planetary bombardments in full force. Cities were burning. Millions were dying. But the human resistance fought back with relentless determination. The Black Rising had turned them into warriors, hardened, fierce, unstoppable. But with every battle, the humanity that had made them who they were seemed to slip further away. Dr. Elena Vasquez had been tracking the progress of the awakening and had a grave report for Cole. "The Black Rising is stronger than we anticipated," she said, her voice tired and strained. "Some of the soldiers, they're losing themselves. They're becoming machines. Not just in combat, but in their thinking, their emotions. They are becoming more like the Velari than we ever imagined." Cole clenched his fists, his eyes darkened by the weight of her words. "I've seen it. Soldiers who used to care for each other, now they fight as if they're just following orders. No fear, no hesitation, no compassion." Dr. Vasquez nodded. "The Black Rising enhances everything. Strength, speed, intellect. But it also consumes empathy, warmth, the very things that make us human." Cole's gaze hardened. "We have no choice but to keep fighting, Elena. If we don't, we lose everything. If we stop now, we give the Velari time to recover and come back stronger. We can't let that happen. But I won't allow our humanity to slip away entirely. There must be a way to fight without losing ourselves." As the days passed, the human forces continued their relentless assault on the Velari, pushing them back across the galaxy. The power within them was undeniable. Human ships, now equipped with alien technologies, were unstoppable. But with every battle, the dark power inside their minds grew stronger. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. was no exception. She stood on the bridge of the Swift, her ship surrounded by the debris of a Velari cruiser she had just destroyed. Her mind was sharp, clearer than ever, but the emptiness inside her was growing. She looked at her crew, who moved in perfect unison, as though they were extensions of herself. They were becoming perfect warriors, but something was missing. They were no longer just people. "Lieutenant, we've completed the mission. The Velari ships are retreating," her communications officer reported. Yuki's hand hovered over the controls, but her mind wasn't on the battle anymore. It was on the whisper in the back of her mind, urging her to continue, to fight, to destroy. To become more. "We're not done yet," Yuki said quietly, her voice flat. "We finish this. No one gets away." As she gave the order, she realized that the person she had once been, the officer who cared deeply for her crew, who believed in justice and mercy, was slipping away. She was becoming something else, something colder, more ruthless. And she didn't know how to stop it. With victory within reach, humanity is faced with a terrifying truth: the Black Rising is consuming them. Will they be able to reclaim their humanity before it's too late, or will they become the very monsters they set out to destroy? The war had reached its most critical juncture. Humanity had pushed the Velari back, and the galaxy was on the brink of witnessing the downfall of the Dominion. Yet, with every victory came a growing sense of unease among the human forces. The Black Rising was no longer just a source of power, it was beginning to take control, and humanity was slipping through their fingers like sand. On the bridge of the Resilience, Admiral Tanaka stood, her hands gripping the rail as she stared out at the battlefield. The Velari fleet had been decimated. There were only a handful of ships remaining. It should have been a moment of triumph, but instead, she felt a deep, gnawing emptiness inside. The Black Rising had made them invincible, but it was also making them lose themselves. "Admiral, we've intercepted their final transmission," Lieutenant Park reported. "The Velari are preparing to retreat into hyperspace. They're abandoning the battle." Tanaka didn't respond immediately. She just stared at the last remnants of the Velari fleet, now retreating in disarray. It was an unexpected victory, but it felt hollow. "Are we really winning?" she whispered to herself. "Or are we just becoming something else?" The question haunted her, but she didn't have time to dwell on it. They had to finish this. They had to end the war, once and for all. But as she turned to issue the order, she saw the same coldness in her crew's eyes. The Black Rising was in all of them now. "We're not finished until the Velari are gone," Tanaka said, her voice emotionless. "Continue the pursuit. On Earth, the situation was equally dire. General Cole stood in the command center, surrounded by reports from across the planet. The human resistance was holding strong, but every victory seemed to come at a price. The soldiers, the people, they were becoming machines. Their compassion, their empathy, was slipping away. And General Cole could feel it in himself, too. "General," one of his aides said, "the final reports from the front lines are in. We've taken control of several Velari colonies, but there's an increasing number of incidents. Some of our soldiers have begun attacking civilians, anyone they perceive as a threat. We're losing control of our own forces." Cole's fists clenched. "It's happening faster than we thought," he muttered. "The Black Rising is changing everything. Not just our strength, but our hearts." Dr. Vasquez approached him, her face lined with exhaustion. "I warned you, General. This power is dangerous. It feeds on violence, on conquest. The more we use it, the more we lose what makes us human." "We don't have a choice," Cole said sharply, though doubt crept into his voice. "If we stop now, we risk everything. The Velari will come back stronger. We can't afford to lose." Dr. Vasquez's eyes were heavy with concern. "And if we win? What will we have become? Is that victory worth it if it costs our souls?" Cole turned away, his mind a battlefield of its own. He had given everything for this war. His soldiers had given everything. But at what cost? Meanwhile, on the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. was watching the retreating Velari fleet on her display. The battle was over, but it wasn't a moment of celebration. Something inside her had snapped. She had embraced the Black Rising fully, her body and mind enhanced beyond human limits. She was no longer just a soldier, she was a weapon, and she could feel it. "Lieutenant, we've received orders to continue pursuit," her weapons officer said, his voice distant. Yuki felt the command as though it had come from within her. "Continue pursuit," she repeated, her voice flat, detached. "No one is allowed to escape." She turned to her crew, their faces vacant, as if they were all thinking the same thing. They were no longer individuals. They were a collective force, a singular entity driven by the Black Rising. It was hard to tell where one ended and the other began. The thought should have frightened her, but it didn't. Instead, it made everything clearer. The mission, the war, it was all part of a greater purpose. A purpose that had nothing to do with saving the galaxy or protecting Earth. It was about power. It was about survival. She gave the order to fire, and once again, the human ships unleashed their fury. The Velari ships, weak and retreating, didn't stand a chance. The human fleet cut through them like a knife through butter. But as the battle raged on, Yuki couldn't help but wonder, what happens when all the enemies are gone? When there's nothing left to fight for? What happens to the power inside us when we've conquered everything? With the Velari on the verge of retreating, humanity stands on the brink of total victory. But at what cost? Can they reclaim their humanity before it's too late, or will they be consumed by the power they've unlocked? The war seemed to be drawing to a close. The Velari fleet was in retreat, their once feared empire crumbling under the weight of humanity's newfound power. Earth and its colonies were now free, or so it seemed. But the deeper humanity moved into victory, the more apparent it became, they were losing themselves to the very power that had saved them. Admiral Tanaka stood before the massive windows of the Resilience's command center, her mind heavy with conflicting thoughts. The enemy was running. The war was almost over. And yet, as she watched the stars beyond, she felt a hollowness inside her. Her crew was no better. They had all changed, some for the worse. Officers who had once laughed and joked now moved with cold precision, their eyes empty, their actions robotic. Tanaka's own reflection in the glass seemed to stare back at her, almost foreign. She had become the leader the fleet needed, but at the cost of who she used to be. "Admiral, we've confirmed that the last of the Velari forces are retreating into deep space," Lieutenant Park reported, her voice steady but with a hint of uncertainty. Victory is ours. Tanaka nodded, her mind still elsewhere. Are we really victorious, Lieutenant? She asked quietly. Is this really winning? Park hesitated for a moment, then spoke carefully. The war is over, ma'am. We've destroyed the Velari. We've freed the enslaved species. The galaxy is ours to shape. Tanaka's eyes flickered to the tactical display, but her mind wasn't on the ships or the battlefield. She could still feel the pull of the black rising inside her, stronger than ever. It was more than a physical force, it had become part of her, part of everything. But was that a victory, or a loss? On Earth, General Cole was also grappling with the consequences of their success. The reports had started to come in, incidents where soldiers, now fully under the influence of the Black Rising, had started attacking their own people. Civilians. Families. Anyone they deemed a threat, even when there was no threat at all. General, we've received reports of attacks by our own forces, one of his aides said, her voice trembling. They don't recognize the difference between the enemy and our people anymore. They're acting like the Velari. Cole's heart sank. He had feared this moment, the point when the power they had awakened would become too much for humanity to handle. He stood silently for a moment, his mind racing. How many casualties? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Too many, General. We're losing control of our own forces. Dr. Vasquez entered the room just then, her expression grave. It's happening faster than I thought, she said softly. The Black Rising is taking over, General. It was always meant to. This power isn't something we were meant to control, it controls us. Cole clenched his fists. I can't stop now, Elena. We've come too far. You're not hearing me, she said sharply, stepping closer. You've all become the very thing you sought to defeat. The Black Rising, it's not a power we control. It controls us. And it's going to consume everything, including our humanity. Meanwhile, on the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. was facing her own battle. The final remnants of the Velari fleet had been wiped out, and the mission should have been over. Yet, her crew, her ship, felt empty. She felt empty. The power within her, inside them all, was growing, consuming. She could no longer feel the difference between herself and the weapon she commanded. Lieutenant, her communications officer said, pulling her from her thoughts. We've completed our last mission. The Velari are gone. We're ready to head back to Earth. Yuki didn't respond right away. She looked at her hands, still gripping the console. Her mind raced. She had become a perfect warrior. But what was she without the battle? Without the fight? Who would she be when the war was truly over? Lieutenant, the officer repeated. She looked up, her gaze sharp and cold. Return to Earth, Yuki ordered. And prepare for further instructions. But deep inside, she wondered what those instructions would be. Would they continue fighting? Would they conquer everything? Or was there nothing left to fight for? Humanity has defeated the Velari, but the price of victory is becoming clearer. The Black Rising is taking control, and the line between victory and destruction is thinner than ever. Will they be able to stop it before it's too late? The victory should have been celebrated, but there was no joy in the aftermath. The Velari were defeated, their once mighty empire reduced to ashes, and the enslaved species freed. Yet, the true cost of that victory was becoming more apparent with every passing day. The Black Rising, the power humanity had unlocked, was growing stronger, and so was its hold over them. Admiral Tanaka stood alone in her quarters, staring at the reflection in the darkened window. The stars were beautiful, distant, unreachable. They had always been a symbol of hope, of exploration. But now, they seemed empty, just like her. The power inside her, the Black Rising, had turned her into a weapon. There was nothing human left in her except the shape of her body. Admiral, "We've completed the final sweep of the Velari systems," Lieutenant Park's voice crackled over the intercom. "There's nothing left to fight. The war is over." Tanaka didn't respond immediately. She could hear the hollow emptiness in Park's voice, too. Her crew had changed, as had the rest of humanity. They had embraced the Black Rising fully, and in doing so, they had lost everything that had made them who they were. "Admiral," Park continued, "the war is over. We should be celebrating. But, we're not. Why is that?" Tanaka turned away from the window, her eyes cold. "We've become what we fought against," she said softly. "The power we unlocked, it's too much. I feel it in myself, and I see it in all of you." Park hesitated, her voice barely a whisper. "But we saved Earth, Admiral. We defeated the Velari. We've freed the enslaved species. And what have we become in the process?" Tanaka whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "We've turned into the very thing we despised. The Black Rising isn't just a power. It's a monster." On Earth, General Cole was dealing with the aftermath in his own way. The planet was in chaos. The victory over the Velari should have brought peace, but it hadn't. There were still pockets of resistance, rogue factions of soldiers who had become too consumed by the power to distinguish friend from foe. Civilians were being attacked, and not by the Velari. His soldiers were no longer fighting for freedom, they were fighting for power. The Black Rising had driven them to new extremes. Even Cole could feel the coldness in his own heart, the sense of detachment, the sharp clarity of thought that pushed away emotions. He could see the transformation in his men and women. They weren't human anymore. They were warriors. And warriors were meant for battle, not for peace. "General," Dr. Vasquez entered the command room with a grim expression. "I've been tracking the changes in the soldiers. It's worse than we thought. Many of them are no longer even recognizing the difference between the enemy and their own people." Cole ran a hand through his hair. "I know, Elena. I see it in myself, too. I feel the power. I feel the coldness. The Black Rising is taking over everything." Dr. Vasquez shook her head. "It's not too late, General. If we don't stop it, humanity will cease to be human. We've unlocked something ancient and dangerous. If we let it control us, we'll destroy everything we've fought for. We'll become them." The silence in the room was thick. It wasn't just the Velari that threatened them now. It was themselves. "We need to make a decision," Dr. Vasquez said. "We either fight this darkness or let it consume us." On the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. stared at her hands, watching as they shook ever so slightly. Her mind was sharp, sharper than it had ever been, but she could no longer feel the warmth of human connection. Her crew had become extensions of herself, moving as one entity. They were all warriors now. But as the power inside her grew, she wondered if there would be anything left of herself when the battle was over. "Lieutenant, all systems are ready," her first officer reported. "We're waiting for your orders." Yuki's thoughts were clouded. She had become the perfect officer, the perfect warrior, but at what cost? What would happen when there were no more enemies left to fight? She thought of her mother, of how Tanaka had once been a woman who cared deeply for Earth, for her family. But now, she was a cold, emotionless commander. Was that her future too? "Lieutenant?" her officer asked again, concerned. Yuki looked up, meeting his gaze. Her eyes were hard, colder than they had ever been. "We wait for further orders," she said, her voice distant. Inside her, the Black Rising stirred. "You were meant for more. Fight. Conquer. Destroy." But Yuki fought back the pull. There was still something left inside her. The question was, how long could she hold on? Humanity has triumphed, but the cost of that victory is becoming clear. The Black Rising is consuming them, turning them into the very monsters they sought to destroy. Can they stop it before it's too late, or will they become the next galactic empire to fall to the darkness? The galaxy had changed. What was once a vast, peaceful expanse was now a battlefield of consequences. The Velari Dominion was no more. The enslaved species were free. Yet humanity stood at the edge of something far more dangerous than the war they had just won. Admiral Tanaka sat in her quarters, staring at the stars. The battle was over, but peace had not come. The Black Rising had transformed humanity into something cold and unstoppable, but at a steep price. She had not felt a real emotion in weeks, nothing but the sharp clarity of purpose that the power had given her. It was exhilarating, but at the same time, she felt empty, like a hollow shell of the person she once was. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park's voice broke her trance. "There's something you need to see. We've just intercepted a message from the Velari survivors." Tanaka didn't respond at first. She had lost count of how many times she had looked at the stars and questioned what had become of her. But the mention of the Velari caught her attention. "What's the message?" she asked quietly. Park hesitated. "They've requested peace talks. The Velari have lost everything. Their fleet is in ruins, their empire shattered. But they're offering terms. They want to negotiate." Tanaka's eyes narrowed. After everything the Velari had done, after the deaths and destruction they had caused, why would they suddenly seek peace? It didn't make sense. "Put the message on screen," Tanaka ordered, her voice still distant. The hologram flickered to life, and there, standing before her, was High Speaker Vorith, his face weary, his once confident posture now deflated. His voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Admiral Tanaka," he said, his tone almost pleading. "We have lost. The Dominion is no more. The galaxy has been irrevocably changed. But we ask for peace. We have no desire for further conflict. We seek only survival. We offer to surrender, under the condition that humanity allows us to live and rebuild. You have destroyed us. Please, show mercy." Tanaka stared at the image of Vorith. For a moment, she felt the stirring of something inside her, something old, something human. But then, the Black Rising pushed that feeling aside, demanding cold, rational action. "You offer surrender now, after all the damage you've caused?" Tanaka's voice was icy, her heart detached. "Why should I believe anything you say?" Voritha's gaze didn't falter. "Because we know what you are becoming, Admiral. We see it in you, in all of you. The Black Rising is more than a weapon. It is a curse. A power that consumes its wielders. And we fear you will be just as we were, lost to it, unable to stop yourselves. We want to live, but we are also asking you to stop before it's too late. Do not become the next empire to fall to the Black Rising." Tanaka's breath caught in her throat. His words pierced deeper than she expected. Was this really what humanity was becoming? Had they already crossed the point of no return? Meanwhile, General Cole was facing a similar crisis on Earth. The reports were coming in, and they weren't good. Soldiers, who had once fought for freedom and peace, were now turning on each other, their minds consumed by the Black Rising. It was no longer just about victory, it was about power, control, and the thirst for more. In a secure command room, Cole paced restlessly. "We've won the war, but we're losing ourselves," he muttered to Dr. Vasquez, who stood beside him. Her face was drawn, tired, but her eyes held a flicker of the same concern that had been growing in Cole. "We have to stop it, Marcus," she said quietly. "Before it's too late. If we don't, we risk becoming the very thing we fought against." Cole stopped pacing and looked at her, his eyes dark with regret. "But how do we stop it? This power is inside all of us now. It's too late to just turn it off." Dr. Vasquez's gaze softened. "There may be a way. I've been studying the artifacts we found, and I think we can contain the Black Rising. It's embedded in our DNA, but we have the ability to suppress it. But it won't be easy. It's a risk, but it's the only way to avoid becoming like the Velari. Cole swallowed hard. And if we fail? What happens then? She shook her head. Then we lose everything. The galaxy will never see peace again. We'll become the very monsters we fought. On the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. watched the conversation unfold on her screen. She had been silent for hours, her mind consumed by the Black Rising. The power had completely overtaken her, but now, she felt the stirring of doubt. Could they still save themselves? Or had they gone too far? Lieutenant, we've received new orders, her first officer said, interrupting her thoughts. We are to continue operations in the Velari systems. There are remnants of their forces still scattered. We need to finish the job. Yuki's eyes hardened. The command was simple, the objective clear. But something inside her stirred, something more human than the cold, calculating force she had become. Is this all we are now? She wondered. A machine designed for conquest. For the first time in a long while, she hesitated. Lieutenant, the officer asked again. Yuki stood up slowly, her mind in turmoil. She could feel the Black Rising clawing at her, urging her to act, to destroy. But there was still a part of her, a small flicker of the woman she once was, that fought back. No, she said firmly. We stop. We go back to Earth. It's time to make a choice. A real choice. As humanity faces the reality of the Black Rising, they are forced to confront the consequences of their actions. Will they succumb to the darkness, or can they find a way to reclaim their humanity before it's lost forever? The galaxy was still. The last remnants of the Velari Dominion had scattered into deep space, their forces shattered, their empire destroyed. But for humanity, the end of the war brought no peace. Instead, it brought a choice that would define their future. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Resilience, watching the stars ahead. The war was over. The enemy was gone. But the true battle had just begun. Admiral, the fleet is ready for your orders, Lieutenant Park reported, but her voice lacked the usual confidence. The crew of the Resilience had changed, just as the rest of humanity had. They had become cold, ruthless, and efficient, but at what cost? Tanaka turned to face her. We're heading back to Earth. It's time to decide what happens next. Park looked confused. But Admiral, we still have unfinished business in the Velari systems. There are pockets of Velari forces left. Tanaka interrupted her, her voice sharp. No. The war is over. Our victory is not about destruction anymore. It's about what comes after. We need to stop, Park. Stop before it's too late. For a moment, silence fell between them. Park, like everyone else, was struggling with the pull of the Black Rising. The power within them all had made them stronger, more focused, but it had also changed them. The hunger for conquest, the drive for perfection, it was overwhelming. And the longer they stayed in battle mode, the more they risked becoming like the Velari. Tanaka's thoughts were clearer than they had been in months. The Black Rising had given them victory, but it had also taken something from them. The cost of their success was the loss of their humanity. And she wasn't sure if it was a price she was willing to pay. On Earth, General Cole stood before a massive screen in his command center. The war was technically over, but the consequences of their victory were everywhere. Soldiers who had once fought to protect their people now acted like machines, remorseless, detached, and cold. The Black Rising was no longer just a power, it was a force that controlled them. Cole had always prided himself on his ability to lead with compassion, to care for his troops, but now, he felt himself slipping away. The power had taken root inside him too. He could feel the sharpness in his mind, the clarity, the cold efficiency that made everything else seem irrelevant. But then, he thought about Dr. Vasquez's warnings. They had won, yes, but at what cost? The Black Rising could not be the future of humanity. Not if they wanted to retain any semblance of what they had once been. We have to stop this, he muttered to himself. Before it's too late. Dr. Vasquez entered the room, her expression weary but resolute. I've been working on a way to suppress the Black Rising, Marcus, she said quietly. There's a chance we can reverse it. But it won't be easy. It's embedded deep within us, in our very genes. It'll be a battle to reclaim ourselves. Cole looked at her, his eyes filled with a quiet resolve. Then we fight it. Whatever it takes. Meanwhile, on the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. had returned from the final battle in the Velari systems, a decision that had shocked her crew. They had expected more orders to hunt down the last remnants of the Velari, but instead, Yuki had ordered them to head back to Earth. Her crew was divided. Some of them, like her, could feel the weight of the Black Rising on their minds. They could feel the hunger to continue, to conquer, to never stop. But there were others, like her first officer, who couldn't understand. They had won. Why stop now? Lieutenant, her first officer said, we've barely begun. The Velari are still out there. We can finish what we started. Yuki turned to face him, her eyes hard. We're not finishing anything. The war is over. Our people need us. And we need to decide what we're going to be after all of this. Are we going to let this power control us, or will we take control back? Her words hung in the air, thick with meaning. Her first officer hesitated. The Black Rising was pulling him too, just as it was pulling everyone else. But Yuki knew the time had come for humanity to make a choice, whether to embrace the darkness within them or fight to keep what little was left of their humanity. Humanity is at a crossroads. The Black Rising has given them everything they wanted, but at a terrible price. Will they take control of their destiny, or will they be consumed by the very power that brought them victory? The decision had been made. Humanity would not fall victim to the very power that had delivered their victory. But even as Admiral Tanaka, General Cole, and their fellow leaders made their choice to reject the Black Rising's full control, they knew it wasn't going to be easy. The darkness within them was powerful, and it had become part of their nature. The real war had only just begun. Admiral Tanaka stood once more in front of the vast window of the Resilience, gazing at the stars. The enemy was gone. But the galaxy felt eerily silent, as though something essential had been lost. She wasn't sure what humanity had become, or what it still could be. But there was one thing she was certain of: the fight for their future was the only one that truly mattered now. Admiral, Lieutenant Park's voice called from behind her, pulling Tanaka out of her thoughts. We've received the final report from Earth. General Cole is ready to move forward with the plan. Tanaka turned to face her. What's the plan? Park hesitated for a moment. General Cole wants us to meet with the Council in Geneva. There's a way to suppress the Black Rising, if we act quickly. But it's a risk. Tanaka thought for a moment. Is it worth it? We don't have a choice, Admiral, Park replied. If we don't do something now, the Black Rising will consume us. It already has us, in many ways. Tanaka nodded slowly. Prepare the ship. We're going to Earth. In Geneva, General Cole was addressing the United Earth Council. The room was filled with the most powerful leaders in the world, but the atmosphere was grim. Victory had not brought relief, it had brought fear. The Black Rising had unlocked their true potential, but now humanity had to reckon with the fact that this power might lead them to a future no one could control. Thank you all for coming, Cole began, his voice firm. We've won. But we've also lost something. We've become more than we were, yes. But we've also become something we cannot fully control. The Black Rising is not a gift, it's a curse. If we continue down this path, we risk becoming exactly what we fought against. Dr. Vasquez stood at his side, her face tight with worry. We found a way to suppress it. It's based on the ancient Martian technology we've been studying. But the process is risky, and it will take time. We will need to work together as one, no one can be left behind. We'll need everyone to focus on suppressing the Black Rising, both individually and as a species. The council was quiet, the weight of their decision hanging in the air. President Morrison of the North American Union spoke first. You're asking us to turn away from the very thing that won us this war. The power that made us strong, that made us unbeatable. You're asking us to fight against what we've become. Dr. Vasquez's voice was calm but filled with urgency. The Black Rising is not what you think. It is a power that consumes. It makes you stronger, but it removes what makes you human. If we do not stop it now, we will lose our ability to choose our future. We will become something cold, something merciless. And we will end up just like the Velari, or worse. General Cole stepped forward. I've seen the change in myself. In my soldiers. We're becoming something else. This power is turning us into weapons, but we are more than that. We must suppress it before we lose everything that makes us who we are. On the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. sat alone in her quarters. The war was over. Her mission had ended. But the questions that lingered in her mind would never go away. What would she become when there was no more fighting? What would she do with the power inside her once the Black Rising had been suppressed? Would she still be human? Her mind kept returning to the conversation she'd had with her mother months ago, before all of this began. The woman she had known, the woman she admired, had been consumed by the Black Rising. Could she, too, be saved from that fate? Yuki turned off the screen in front of her, staring into the emptiness of her room. There was no easy answer. All she knew was that the power inside her was still there, still pushing, still demanding more. And no matter how hard she tried to fight it, part of her wondered, would she be able to live without it? Would humanity? Humanity has chosen to fight back against the power that has consumed them. The path forward is uncertain, but the hope for a better future remains. Will they succeed in reclaiming their humanity, or will the darkness take hold once more? The journey to Earth was quiet. The fleet, now unified in purpose, sailed through the stars toward the one place that could either redeem or destroy them. As the Resilience neared Earth's orbit, Admiral Tanaka stood once again before the stars. Her eyes were focused, but her mind was lost in thought. The decision had been made. The suppression process, devised by Dr. Vasquez, was humanity's only chance to reclaim their souls. It would take immense effort, a collective will to fight the darkness inside them, and most importantly, time. Time they didn't have. Admiral, we're approaching Earth, Lieutenant Park's voice broke through Tanaka's reverie. We've been ordered to align with General Cole's fleet for the suppression operation. Tanaka nodded but didn't reply. She knew what was at stake. The last time humanity had been presented with such power, it had torn them apart. Now, they had to pull together, or risk losing everything they had fought for. On Earth, General Cole watched the stars from his command center, the pressure of the world on his shoulders. The Council had agreed to move forward with the suppression process. It was their last hope. But Cole felt a weight that no amount of military training or strategy could prepare him for, the knowledge that what they were doing might not be enough. The process would not be easy. Dr. Vasquez had been clear. The Black Rising had altered their very DNA. They were no longer the species they once were. Suppressing it would take everything they had. And it could destroy them in the process. He turned to Dr. Vasquez, who had been monitoring the preparations. Is it possible? Can we truly suppress it without completely losing ourselves? She hesitated before answering. It's our only chance, Marcus. The longer we wait, the harder it will be. But the process is dangerous. There are no guarantees. Some may lose their connection to the Black Rising entirely, others may lose their humanity in the process. But it's the only way to stop what we've become. Cole looked out at the cityscape below. Humanity had come so far. But now, with the Black Rising threatening to consume them, it felt like the beginning of the end. As the fleets assembled in orbit, Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the comm system. "We're ready to begin. All ships must link their systems. We'll need to coordinate the entire fleet's energy to initiate the suppression protocol." Tanaka, standing on the bridge of the Resilience, gave the order to link the fleet. She knew it was the right choice. But something within her stirred, a subtle warning, a flicker of doubt that she couldn't shake. The Black Rising whispered to her, urging her to let go, to let the power take over. It was as if the power had become a living thing inside her, clawing at her mind, demanding she embrace it. She fought it back. She had to. "Admiral?" Park asked, her voice hesitant. "Are you sure about this? We're committing to a process we don't fully understand." Tanaka looked at her crew. They were all feeling it, the pull of the Black Rising. "We don't have a choice," she said firmly, her voice unwavering despite the fear gnawing at her insides. "We can't let this power control us any longer. We fight for our humanity, not for the power it gave us." The suppression began. Energy was channeled from the fleet's collective systems, powering the massive generators designed to disrupt the Black Rising's influence. Across the ships, humanity felt the change. It was as if the very core of their being was being rearranged. Minds that had once been sharp with the clarity of the Black Rising were now clouded, disoriented. Some soldiers fell to their knees, clutching their heads, others stood frozen in place, their faces vacant. General Cole's own hands shook as he monitored the process. The power of the Black Rising was everywhere, like a storm inside them, fighting to remain. It fought against their control, clawing at their minds. Cole felt the same cold clarity he had once embraced, but now it felt distant, harder to grasp. "Stay strong," Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the comm, her voice filled with urgency. "The process is working, but it will take time. We must hold on." Tanaka's eyes closed for a moment, as if the pressure was too much to bear. "Stay human," she told herself, her fists clenched at her sides. "Stay human." On the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. stood at her post, her eyes flicking to the tactical display. It had been hours since the suppression had started, and the change was almost palpable. The urge to fight, to conquer, had faded, replaced by something less certain. Yuki didn't know whether she felt relief or fear. The Black Rising had given her everything, but it had also taken so much. It had taken the warmth of love, the desire to protect, the softness of humanity. But now, she was being given a chance to take it all back. Her hands trembled slightly. She felt the power still there, deep inside her. It wasn't gone. But it was quieter now, like a distant voice that no longer had control. The battle had been won, but the real struggle, of reclaiming their souls, was just beginning. The suppression process is in full swing, but not all of humanity will survive the fight for their humanity. Will they be able to suppress the Black Rising and find peace, or will they be forever consumed by the power they unleashed? The suppression process was not as quick as they had hoped. Humanity was fighting not just the external threat of the Velari but a far more insidious enemy, themselves. The Black Rising had infiltrated every part of their being, every cell in their body. It had altered them, made them stronger, but it had also made them colder, more detached. Now, as they tried to suppress it, they could feel the full weight of what they had become. Admiral Tanaka sat in the command center of the Resilience, her hands resting on the console in front of her. The suppression process was still ongoing, but she felt the effects of the power inside her more clearly than ever before. Her thoughts were sharp, but distant. The Black Rising no longer shouted at her, instead, it whispered, tempting her to embrace it once again. But she fought it, every inch of her being resisting the call. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park's voice broke the silence, "we've initiated the final phase of the suppression protocol. The fleet systems are stabilizing, but there are some reports of resistance from the crew." Tanaka nodded slowly. "It's to be expected. The Black Rising has taken hold of us all. Some will resist the process more than others. We need to be prepared for that. Are you sure this is the right path? Park asked, her voice tinged with doubt. We've fought for so long, and now we're trying to undo everything we've become. Tanaka turned to her. Her eyes were tired, but determined. We may have gained power, but we lost something in the process. Our humanity. And if we don't fight to reclaim it now, we risk losing everything. We're more than weapons. We're more than conquerors. We have to remember that. On Earth, General Cole was overseeing the suppression process in the planetary command center. His hands were shaking, his heart racing. He could feel the black rising, still present in his mind, like a cold presence that wouldn't let go. The energy from the fleet was pouring into the generators, each surge of power suppressing the influence of the black rising. But it wasn't easy. The process was slow, agonizing, and painful. Dr. Vasquez was beside him, monitoring the progress. It's working, but we're losing people, she said, her voice tight with worry. The suppression is taking a toll. Some of the soldiers are losing their connection to the black rising entirely, but others are breaking. Cole swallowed hard. Are we sure this is the right thing to do? If we don't stop it now, we lose everything we've gained. But if we suppress it, can we still function as a species? Dr. Vasquez didn't answer immediately. She was staring at the data, her brow furrowed. We're losing some of them, Marcus. The black rising has become too much for their minds to handle. It's like they're tearing themselves apart to rid themselves of it. Cole's heart sank. And the ones who can handle it? What will they become? She looked at him, her eyes full of sorrow. We don't know yet. We have to believe that we can come through this, whole, human. But there are no guarantees. The process isn't just suppressing the black rising. It's forcing us to remember who we are, to reclaim the very parts of us we gave up in the fight for power. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. stood at the helm of the Swift, watching the events unfold on her screen. The suppression was happening all around her, and yet, she could still feel the power inside her, still hear the whispers. It was harder to resist now, harder to keep control. Her crew, once full of life and emotion, was now silent, their faces cold, their movements robotic. Some of them had already been lost. The black rising had been too much for their minds, and the suppression had sent them into a spiral. They had been left behind in the struggle to reclaim humanity. Yuki's fingers hovered over the controls. The power was there, right at her fingertips. She could feel it, almost like it was calling to her. The temptation to let go, to let the black rising consume her completely, was overwhelming. But then she remembered the faces of the soldiers, the families, the people they had fought to protect. She thought of her mother, Admiral Tanaka, and the woman she had once been, before the black rising had taken hold of her. Could Yuki save herself? Could she save humanity? She closed her eyes, pushing the temptation aside. I can't lose myself, she thought. Not now. Not after everything we've fought for. The suppression process is reaching its breaking point. Some are losing their connection to the black rising entirely, while others are losing themselves in the struggle. Can humanity hold on to what they once were, or will they be forever changed by the power they sought to control? The galaxy was still. Humanity had won, but the war they had fought against the Velari had paled in comparison to the internal battle they now faced. The black rising, once their greatest weapon, was now their greatest threat, and the suppression process had pushed them to their limits. The cost of reclaiming their humanity was becoming clearer with every passing hour. Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Resilience, staring out into the void of space. The suppression was nearing its final phase, but the strain was visible on every face around her. The crew had changed, not just physically, but emotionally. Some had completely lost their connection to the black rising, while others were still fighting the internal battle to retain their humanity. The power that had once made them invincible was now making them fragile. Admiral, Lieutenant Park's voice interrupted her thoughts. We're starting to see some results. The fleet's energy levels are stabilizing, but we're still losing some of the crew. The ones who can't handle the suppression are. Tanaka nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. I know. We're not all going to make it through this. But we have to remember what this fight was really about. Park hesitated before speaking. You've held us together, Admiral. But I can feel it, too. The Black Rising isn't just inside us anymore. It's part of us, a part we can't fully erase. Tanaka's gaze hardened. We're not erasing it, Lieutenant. We're learning to live with it. We can't forget what we've become, but we can still choose what we do with that power. The Black Rising doesn't control us. We control it. On Earth, General Cole paced anxiously in the command center. The suppression process was working, but the cost was steep. The soldiers who had been most deeply affected by the Black Rising were struggling the hardest to reclaim their humanity. Some had slipped into comas, their minds unable to handle the strain. Others had become disconnected entirely, unable to remember who they were before the power had consumed them. Dr. Vasquez stood beside him, her expression grim. It's not going as smoothly as we hoped. We've lost more soldiers than I anticipated. Cole clenched his fists. But some are coming through it, aren't they? Some are still able to feel, still able to fight for what we once believed in. Dr. Vasquez nodded slowly. Yes. But it's going to take time. The suppression process is forcing us to confront everything we've become. It's not just about rejecting the Black Rising. It's about finding a balance, a way to live with the power without letting it consume us. Cole let out a long breath. We need to stay focused. We've come too far to lose now. Back on the Swift, Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka Jr. had been struggling to stay grounded. The power was still inside her, whispering, demanding. But with each passing day, the whispers became quieter. The suppression had forced her to confront the darkness inside her, and though it wasn't gone, it was no longer in control. She felt more human now than she had in weeks. Lieutenant, her first officer called, breaking her out of her thoughts. We're receiving new orders from Earth. The suppression is complete, but we're still not fully stable. General Cole wants us to hold position and prepare for further instructions. Yuki nodded, though her mind wasn't fully on the orders. She was still grappling with the changes inside her, trying to hold on to the person she had been before the Black Rising had taken hold. The power was still there, deep inside her, but now, for the first time in a long while, it felt like she had control again. We'll hold position, Yuki said, her voice steady. We need to give Earth time to recover from the process. And we need time to figure out what comes next. As the fleets moved into position, the suppression process continued. Some soldiers were beginning to stir, their minds recovering from the strain. Others still fought to stay connected to their humanity, struggling to regain what they had lost. Admiral Tanaka's thoughts were heavy with uncertainty. She had made the right choice, she knew that. But as they stood on the brink of a new future, she couldn't help but wonder, what kind of future would it be? Would humanity rebuild, stronger than ever, learning from the mistakes of the past? Or would they fall victim to the same darkness that had almost destroyed them? The Black Rising had changed them forever. But perhaps, in time, they could change it, too. They could learn to live with the power, to control it, without being consumed by it. Humanity has fought its greatest battle, not against an external enemy, but against itself. The suppression process is nearing its end, but the cost has been high. Can they truly reclaim their humanity, or will the Black Rising continue to shape their destiny? Let this message ignite your faith, rekindle your hope, and spur you to stand firm on your journey. Thank you for staying with me to the end. If this story stirred your heart, drop a like, share this video with someone who needs it, and hit that subscribe button to catch more content like this. May God's blessings overflow in your life, and I'll see you soon.